Is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS AM 1160 and 101.1 FM. Our conversation with Representative Jim Struzzi, brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. He assures me that it's just cold. Jim, good morning.
Good morning, Todd.
My gracious, you don't sound good.
No, it's been coming on, but it's just an old-fashioned cold, no respiratory thing, just some sinus and sore throat. But I'm at home. I'm at home. So.
Yeah, well, that's where you should be. It's where you should be. All right, so the governor yesterday coming out and doing it at night when there really was no business day left for anybody to comment or push back on. The governor saying non-life-sustaining jobs, got to shut them down.
Right.
Too far of an overreach?
Well, I understand we have to make some extreme decisions right now. I mean, this virus needs to be taken very seriously. But I think the communications need to be better. And I think this really put a lot of people into a lurch. There were a lot of unanswered questions. My Facebook page, my phone, my emails have been blowing up all night with people just wondering, how does this apply to me? Can I go to work? Can't I go to work? The governor really did not communicate with the legislature at all before rolling this out. So we were shocked as everybody else. And we're trying to answer the questions, and I know there's a lot of fear and apprehension out there. And I think people need to be smart, but I also think that the governor needed to put a little bit more thought into this before rolling it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And as your Republican leadership said, it sort of threw everything into a panic last night.
Oh, it absolutely did, and people don't know what to do. And there's some services that we simply need right now, and it's tax season. I've heard from a number of different businesses like they just don't know what to do because people need their services. So what we're hoping is that we can reach out to the governor to get some clarifications today, maybe pull back on some of this stuff, and just to make it make more sense. But I think really we all have to be working together. And I know some people want to make this a political issue, but it certainly isn't. We just want to do what's right for the people in Pennsylvania. I'm deeply, deeply concerned for the small business owners. Obviously we're in uncharted waters, and I get that, and we have to do what's right for the health of everyone, but we also have to do it wisely, and we have to keep society functioning. I mean, this is scary times, and we got to make sure that we are leading in the right direction and not leaving people hanging or confused.
Several lawmakers were pointing out in recent days that the governor seems to have forgotten that the state constitution gives the power over closures of businesses to the legislature, and to the legislature only. He cited one particular law that some said did not apply in this case. Others say that's up for debate. How do you stand on the legislature's involvement and the state constitution demanding that the legislature be involved?
Well, I think we need to be involved, Todd, and we haven't been up to this point. I know that we have our legal team in Harrisburg, trying to understand what powers the governor has and doesn't have during these circumstances. At the very least, though, I think communication needs to improve so people know when these things are being considered. Dropping something like this on society at 5 o'clock at night and telling them they need to close by 8, that's extreme. So we do have a bit of a grace period, I guess, today with enforcement not beginning until tomorrow morning. We're going to try to get some clarification and try to understand, the rationale behind some of these businesses being allowed to stay open and some of them being forced to close. But really, I think it's our responsibility to the public to make sure that this stuff is communicated better.
All right. So obviously, the state has been reacting as quickly as it can to the changing situation, which changes really by the minute. Having to do with COVID-19 in the legislature. What are some of the discussions that you are engaging with your colleagues, even if at a distance?
Well, we're doing some conference calls, basically looking at how we can relax laws to help businesses, what we can do with taxes, what additional resources can we provide. There are so many questions that come up when something like this happens that you don't think about until it happens. A lot of people just don't understand, how am I going to survive? What does this mean to my business? What about education? There's concerns with, how do we provide education if we don't go back to school and kids don't have online access? So we're talking about all those different things and what we could do legislatively to make this more bearable for people and to make sure that our society can continue to function as it needs to.
You mentioned earlier about Facebook and social media contacts, Twitter, whatever it happens to be. When situations such as this, even though this is something that nobody's ever had to deal with before, but when emergency situations come up, they do tend to get right to their legislators, to their lawmakers, don't they, to find out what can be done and what the situation is, because there's so much uncertainty.
Well, certainly, and I think that's important for people to have that communication mechanism. As I said, communication through this crisis is going to be vital, Todd. I know everyone is feeling the stress and the anxiety and the uncertainty of this. We're trying to provide as much information as we can to each people's fears and concerns to make sure that everybody understands what's happening and why these decisions are being made. And we want the governor to be a partner in that. And up to this point, it really hasn't happened. And that's why I think it's so important that we're all on the same page when these decisions are being made and people are informed. Most of this information is being, transmitted through social media, other than the news coverage, but it's just unprecedented times.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Hey, drawing upon your experience with the Chamber of Commerce, and you have had a number of different positions with a number of different organizations down through the years. We are so caught up in the short term, in everything that's happening now, but there are long-term issues that will need to be addressed when we're finally through all of this. One of those that I was thinking of this morning was that with so many people being now forced to work from their home, their companies are forced to adapt as well. And come the end of all of this, when things are, quote, back to whatever normal there is, there's the real potential that a bunch of business buildings are going to be available because companies will have discovered we can do this from home and save the overhead. That's not certainly at top of the mind right now, but it's something that is going to have to be dealt with long term.
Well, and I think it is going to change some business models, Todd. I think you're absolutely right. People are going to look at where we have weaknesses, and there will be some good that comes from this, I hope, in that we'll be better prepared in the event that something like this happens in the future, that we'll see where there's gaps in technology, where there's gaps in our treatment and capacity, and I'm hoping that this will pass with minimal consequences, and then we can learn from some of these mistakes so that it doesn't happen again. We can improve for the future.
You and Senator Pittman both sit on your respective chambers' appropriations committee, and you're in the middle of budget discussions. Budget hearings are going on. What has all of this done to that process? Or is there any chance that we get a budget on time this year? Or is that all of that going to be delayed as well?
Well, I think that's going to depend on how long this continues. We really haven't been doing much with the budget right now. Everyone is trying to answer the concerns of their constituents and deal with the emergency that's right before us. I think we're going to get back into the budget here once we sort of figure out the course that we're going to go. We'll be able to have more of those discussions, most likely remotely. But for right now, we're all focused on the crisis and meeting the needs of our constituencies.
I'm sure you've heard already from the House leadership. What are they saying that they might do in reaction to the governor's declaration last night? Well,
there's talk of a press conference this afternoon. I'm sure there'll be more information forthcoming on that. But basically, as I said earlier, Todd, we want the governor to just communicate better, to give us some, more information on, how this is going to affect businesses, how people are going to be affected. There's so many questions now. All these different people are calling and asking, what about me? It's tax season. Accountants are calling. People have to file their taxes still. Is there going to be a tax extension? I'm hearing from kennels and things like that. We have to go to work to take care of animals. All these things, there's too much ambiguity in the governor's announcement, and it came at such a late hour, and it's really hard to answer those questions when we're not being informed ourselves. So all we ask is that better communication occurs, and and this is for the people, general public. We need to be able to communicate with them so that they understand what's happening. And I don't think this helps ease people's fears and tensions when, these kind of decisions are made without consulting with others and communicating with others.
This conversation may not have happened yet, but it will. The other day, it was announced that taxes had been extended 90 days to July 15th. Then they walked it back a little bit and said, we only meant payments. You still have to file by April 15th, which was different from what they had said initially. So people still do have to file by April 15th. However, yesterday in Congress, a resolution was introduced to push the filing deadline back to July 15th. Does Pennsylvania just generally follow along with what the federal government is going to do? I do imagine it takes some legislative action no matter what.
I think so in that case, Todd. It makes sense. Certainly, if people can't get out and they can't go to their tax office and their tax office is closed, how can you meet the filing deadline? So I think that makes sense, absolutely, and I would think that Pennsylvania would follow suit as well. And those are the kind of discussions that we are having. There's so many things that come with something like this, and we as the legislature, we want to be leaders and we want to make sure that we're doing the right things for those people. So we are having those discussions as well.
All right. I don't know that chicken soup will solve corona, but it certainly does solve a cold. So have a bunch of that and get better, okay?
All right, Todd. Thanks again.
State Representative Jim Struzzi with us this morning here in the